It was late evening when I received her text. "I'm home waiting for you to return from your trip." On the surface it sounded innocent, sweet even, but in my line of work, words were never just words. I smiled faintly, replying quietly, "Funny. I can see you on the hidden cam." Clara, my wife of 6 years, had always loved control. In the early days it was subtle, playful, a kind of power struggle that kept things exciting. But over the past year, her control had turned into manipulation, secrecy, and a thirst for attention that bordered on recklessness. Trips she took, friends she met, late nights out. It all had layers she expected me to ignore. And now, on the surface of a simple text, I could sense the tension, the little thrill she thought I wouldn't notice. I remembered the day I installed the hidden cameras, not because I didn't trust her, but because years of deceit and surprises had taught me to anticipate the unexpected. I had learned the hard way that people reveal their true selves when they believe no one is watching. And Clara tonight would unknowingly reveal everything. The flight back had been long, but the anticipation of this moment made time stretch. Every mile closer to home tightened the knot of curiosity and quiet dread in my chest. I thought about the last week, her sudden excitement, the late-night texts, her insistence on going out with friends when I had specifically asked to spend time together. I had let it slide, pretending ignorance, watching quietly. Tonight, though, would be different. Tonight, she would see that nothing escapes my attention. By the time I arrived, the lights of our apartment glowed faintly through the blinds. I stepped inside, letting the door click softly behind me, my presence unseen. Clara moved across the room, oblivious, laughing at her phone as if she were sharing a private joke with someone I wasn't meant to know about. I watched her, silent, calm, every detail recorded in my mind, the tilt of her head, the curve of her smile, the nervous flicker in her eyes as she checked her messages again. Clara didn't hear me move, didn't see me standing quietly in the shadows, observing every detail. She was lost in her little world, laughing at messages, adjusting her hair, checking her reflection in the mirror. That tiny sense of freedom, the thrill of secrecy, was her undoing. I had learned long ago that people reveal the most about themselves when they believe no one is watching, and tonight, Clara was about to prove it. I remembered the trips, the parties, the late nights she had needed to go out for. At the time I had trusted her, respected her independence, convinced that marriage didn't mean control but partnership. Yet, the pattern had become too clear to ignore. Subtle lies, vague excuses, moments of inexplicable distraction, each a thread weaving a tapestry of deceit. I had tried to confront her gently before, testing her boundaries with questions, offering space and understanding. But tonight wasn't about gentle tests. Tonight was about clarity. I stepped closer, careful not to make a sound. She glanced at the TV, laughing at a notification, unaware that her every movement was visible to me in real time. It wasn't just curiosity anymore, it was necessity. I needed to see for myself what had been hinted at, whispered about, and almost denied. My heart remained steady, though a quiet storm of anticipation built behind my calm exterior. Finally, she looked up, her eyes scanning the room for me, or perhaps for some imaginary audience she thought she was entertaining. "I'm home," she murmured to herself, smiling faintly. I didn't respond. Instead, I allowed the silence to stretch, the quiet weight of observation pressing against her, subtle but undeniable. A small part of her must have sensed it. She paused, fingers hovering over her phone. Her chest rose and fell more quickly than usual, and I caught the flicker of doubt in her gaze. She tried to act normal, moving toward the kitchen to pour herself a glass of wine, laughing quietly as if nothing had happened. But every action was a revelation. I had learned to read her body language, the small tells, the inconsistencies between words and deeds. Each movement was a confession, each glance a subtle betrayal. And in this quiet, private theater of observation, the truth had nowhere to hide. I stayed still, letting her believe she remained in control, letting her actions speak louder than any confrontation ever could. The tension mounted, thick and invisible, until it became almost tangible. And then, just as she reached for her glass, I decided it was time she fully understood. I had seen everything, and the game she thought she controlled was over. Clara froze mid-motion, the wine glass in her hand trembling slightly. The confidence she had carried into the apartment moments ago was gone, replaced by a flicker of unease she could no longer mask. Her eyes darted around, searching for me, wondering if I had been watching her the entire time. I stepped forward slowly, deliberately, my presence calm, unhurried, and impossible to ignore. "Funny," I said softly, lifting my glass just slightly. "You said you were home waiting for me. And yet here you are, completely unaware that I've been watching." My voice was quiet, but it cut through the room sharper than any shout could. She blinked, caught off guard, trying to process the implication of my words. The realization began to sink in. The little lies, the secret trips, the hidden excitement. All of it had been seen, recorded, known. Her lips parted, but no words came out. She had tried to charm, to manipulate, to test boundaries, but all of it crumbled under the weight of calm observation. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to accuse. The truth spoke for itself, louder than any confrontation ever could. Clara's silence became a confession. Each subtle twitch, each nervous glance, each forced smile betrayed her. I took another slow sip of wine, letting the moment stretch, letting her feel the full weight of her actions. "I trusted you," I said finally, my tone measured, almost mournful. "I gave you every chance to respect that trust. But you made your choice. You chose secrecy, excitement, and control over honesty and partnership." She lowered her gaze, shame mingling with frustration, as the truth became undeniable. She tried to reach for an explanation, a justification, but I held up my hand. "There's nothing to explain. Actions speak louder than words, Clara. And tonight, your actions have said everything I needed to know." The apartment felt heavy, thick with the tension of unspoken truths. The thrill she had sought so desperately outside had come home, not as freedom but as reckoning. Finally, she sank into the nearest chair, silent, absorbed in the consequences of her recklessness. I finished the wine, setting the glass down with deliberate calm. The power balance had shifted. The games, the manipulation, the tests, they were all over. Clara had glimpsed the truth, that actions have weight, that trust is earned, and that boundaries are never to be crossed lightly. I turned away, walking toward the window, letting her stew in realization. Tonight had been a quiet confrontation, a subtle reckoning, a lesson she would not forget. And though our marriage's future remained uncertain, one fact was undeniable. I would never allow deception, secrecy, or manipulation to go unchallenged again. The hidden cam had spoken, and the truth, as always, was unstoppable.